After Pious Poplicola left the home of M. Toon, it was a small matter of finding a path back to Caligula's Carnival. A turn off a side street that was not quite there, and a few steps between a painting of two clowns, one smiling and one frowning. Between joy and melancholy is where the plutocrat walked to his home. When Pius made it through the path, he appeared at the entrance of the carnival. Here the red tents and bright lights could be seen for miles. But the darkness around the carnival was one that even the plutocrat dared not to stare too long into. Here the abyss didn't merely gaze back. It struck first. Making his way to the entrance, Pius saw that the ostiary was taking tickets from the line that never seemed to end. The guests never noticed where the tickets came from. They just knew it was in their hands when they arrived at the entrance. They weren't observant enough to notice how every ticket was blood-soaked and had to be cut from their hands. But Pious Poplicola could see every scrap of flesh that the ostiary collected, bringing even more into the carnival. As Pius passed by the line, the guests' eyes turned misty, as they were unable to even remember seeing Pius while he was in this place. But the ostiary, with his bloodshot eyes and his fingertips worn to a sharp point, paused from his duty to bow his head towards the plutocrat as he passed. Pius didn't bother to acknowledge him. He knew the ostiary's name, but if he gave it, then he would end the ostiary's contract and his life. So Pius did the merciful thing and refused to acknowledge him as he traveled into the carnival proper. The carnival smelled like any other carnival out in the world. The smell of animals, cooking food, machine grease, people, and sewage all intermingled in the air. That brought a large smile to Pius's face as he stepped over a man lying face down in his own blood. As Pius walked by, he reached into his pocket and threw loose gold coins among the masses of the carnival. People would pause in their games and bets to scrabble for the gold coins, like rats after scraps of food. Pius only laughed to himself as he watched both guests and workers alike fight and scrounge for the coins. When the coins left Pius's hands, they were clean and pure. By the time they made it to the hands of the masses, they were covered in filth, dirt, and blood, as they fought to hold on to even a single coin, as Pius threw another handful of coins, creating another mad rush for the gold, as he took a deep breath. That was the smell of home, the glorious smell of blood, sewage, disease, and pain. That smell meant that from this filthy sewer, pure gold flows. As Pius made his way deeper into the carnival, past all of the circles into where even the employees would fear to tread, Pius had one job to do before he went to see his boss. In a dark, secluded tent, a woman sat chained to the table, her arms tied down and fully exposed. She approached Pius asking about her son a few days ago, but now she was exhausted and unable to speak due to the metal plates over her eyes and mouth. The screws dripped crimson as she still bled, and despite clearly being in pain, she had grown too tired to try to escape anymore. Pius lifted the cooler up and opened it. Removing some familiar hands from the cooler, he whispered to the hands while he laid them down. He waited while the cold, pale hands twitched as the fingers dragged the hands over to where the woman's hands laid, while the fortune-teller's teeth dug into the flesh while she screamed behind her metal plate. After a few minutes, the woman's hands were left as bloody bones, as Pius removed a blade from his suit and cut away the bony remains from the woman's wrists, while the woman's tears and blood dripped from her eye plates, while the plutocrat connected the severed hands to the woman's wrists. The woman kept crying and screaming while the tendons were tied and as the skin was sewn together. The hands twisted as the palms faced upwards, as the mouths opened, and the needle-like teeth surrounded green eyes, the same color as the woman's eyes. "Welcome back, fortune teller," Pious said as the two hands began to scream, as the fortune teller realized he was trapped by the carnival once again. When Pious was done, he left the fortune teller to his new body, as Pious traveled even further into the carnival, deep within the carnival, to a place that only the plutocrats, and once a witch, ever went. Pious prepared to meet the master of the carnival. The door to the master's room didn't have any doorknob, but Pious was able to enter anyway. While within the room, the lights were dim, while Pious crawled towards where his master sat. In the dim light of the single torch, Pious's clothes were very different. His fine suit was now dirty, blood-stained rags. His hat was replaced by a simple crown of gold as he crawled towards his master's throne. His hands stuck to the drying blood on the floor, and he only stopped when he reached the step, careful not to look upon his master as he kept his eyes down to his bony, blood-stained hands. "The fortune teller has been recaptured, my master." Pious's words echoed through the room before fading to silence. Then he spoke again. "What do you want me to do next to serve you?" Pious asked. There was no response as Pious waited and waited. After 20 minutes of silence, Pious bowed his head to the ground, smearing blood on his forehead before he spoke again. "I understand, my lord," he said as he turned to crawl away, again careful not to look up and to not look upon his master. But he also moved as quietly as possible as he moved his way to the door. While Pious did not know of anyone who had angered the master, he had heard that the master's anger was legendary. So he hoped the quiet would please his master. As he left the room to go to his other duties, the master's room sat quiet. Within the master's room, in the center of the room full of blood and darkness, was a single throne, carved out of gold with gems embedded throughout, so even in the dim light, the gems reflected the light and made the throne appear bright as the sun. But as for who was sitting on the throne of the master of Caligula's Carnival of Cannibalistic Carnage, the throne was empty. The master was nowhere to be seen, and he was nowhere within the throne room. The throne was empty, like it always was.